Hey guys, we're going to do an update to my S.H.I.E.L.D. roster. Where did that come from? Anyway, let's talk about the changes to my S.H.I.E.L.D. roster before we get into it. If you haven't watched my initial video, you can check it out right here. I talk about my first 30 or 40 games with S.H.I.E.L.D. and I think it's really informative and talks about my initial exploration of the roster. We're also going to talk about the new stuff here as well. And then I think we're going to wrap up talking about S.H.I.E.L.D's bad matchups. Alright, first up, let's talk about Captain America. So Steve Rogers' Captain America is kind of the middle child of the new releases. He's not super good, he's not super bad. He's kind of understated, at least in the durability department. So like he's 443 with the ability to bump his 2 good defenses up to 6. This ability is kind of like wildly overrated in the game. It doesn't impact the dice as much as one thinks it does, and 2 power is really expensive for it. Especially since Cap has 2 really powerful abilities that also cost similar amounts of power. Like the reroll all once per activation is crazy good. Flurry on the strike is very strong, and his like sometimes better than charge on your left makes him like just shockingly fast. Like he very much is just that scene where he's running 12 miles to open the second Captain America movie. I think he's good, but he doesn't make my 10. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's tough to justify a 4 that's not Venom. Like, the 4 has to be better than Venom, and then he also has to be better than Bullseye and Black Widow. Like, playing those 2. And those situations are pretty rare. I think where he's good is, like, the flip scenarios and, like, kind of into X-Men, so you can use his mobility powers to get inside the 2 to ignore cover, and then just really, like, put Hurt out. But he is fragile, he's a frontliner, and those things really hurt him. The 4 defense is great for trying to hit the flips. Energy defense is a thing we kind of struggle with. We top out at 3. We have a ton of 2s. I think he's okay. I don't play him. He's better than people give him credit for, though. Human Torch at the time of recording this has been just released, and I'm not sure what to make of him yet. He's really fragile. He's like a specialist for like center scenarios and narrow scenarios, and but he also like wants to hit and run. So like his beam makes him really good. That if you can get him on demons or gamma or something, you can set up really strong beams and put a lot of incinerates out. And even though his main attack, his builder is kind of garbage, that's the faction. The faction just makes a ton of 4 dice attacks. He can make a ton of 4 dice attacks because he has a beam. Wild Incinerate is nuts on a beam. I kind of didn't think they were going to give us anything like this. But the model's incredibly fragile. The Spender, while really interesting, because it can act like this mini Helios, where it, like, you just dump his power to try to just like go over the top of something that you struggle to go over the top of. It also hurts himself, which can make an already fairly fragile model extremely fragile. I think if you're playing an affiliation battle, I think this guy not only hits your list, but will hit the table in a handful of matchups. Like anytime they're playing like Juggernaut or Kingpin or something that's like or Thanos that you have to go up and over of. I think he will be interesting in that faction locked format, but I think he doesn't quite get there. But he does have a lot of things that I really like about S.H.I.E.L.D., like the ticky-tack damage when you throw him, the just like ability to make many attacks because every one of his attacks is a beam. I need to get some table time with him. I'm not ready to 100% write him off, but I don't think he's going to make my competitive 10. Now, we haven't seen the 2 Tactics cards in this box yet, which means that my opinions on both Cap and Torch could change wildly. Like, if there's a refreshing bodyguard card for Cap, I think that could wildly change stuff. If there's, like, everybody with a condition takes 1 damage, would wildly change my opinion on Torch. I think it's really up in the air still. Nick Fury Sr. in the Howling Command. Yeah, it's probably fine. Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos are the thing I am most excited about with these new S.H.I.E.L.D. changes. This model is crazy strong, and I actually think supplants Bucky from the core. When I build S.H.I.E.L.D. lists, I start from Fury Jr., Fury Sr., Iron Man. I don't think Bucky is as core as everybody else thinks, and I think this model is just the nutsest thing that, like, this is one of the reasons to play the faction. So starting off, he's just another super strong 3 threat. I love that he can shoot outside of stealth, keeping him safe. So even though he is a fairly fragile piece, he is able to interact with the game from relative safety, which is a thing that all of S.H.I.E.L.D. wants. S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to interact with you and not be interacted with. Second, got your back is definitely the elephant in the room. This is really strong. Having 2 got your backs means that you're almost always in range of 1 of them, and that when you're in range of 2 of them, you almost certainly have to be going after either Bucky or the Howling Commandos. You can't just like let these guys get all these free attacks and all this free value shooting you. One of the really interesting things, so Howling Commandos have power problems because they only have a gainer, so they just get 1 power per attack they make, and they have a lot of demands on their power. Their initial grenades, the auto-incinerate, wildly changes what S.H.I.E.L.D. is able to kill. Like, this changes the math of killing some harder targets wildly, and is super core to what S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to do, and really just takes the power level of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think, up a ton. I think auto-incinerate on one of their core characters really changes just the math of their really terrible attacks. And I like it a ton. Their spender shows over is really strong. I can't believe we put Wild Flurry back into the game. I thought AMG had agreed with everybody that Wild Flurry was a mistake, and they took it out of every single character that had Wild Flurry, and now it's back. I'm not complaining. I'm going to play this a ton, but I think this is a mistake. I don't think they should have had access to Wild Flurry. But yet again, we have a model that's able to do multiple attacks reliably. And he can do it in a couple different ways with either Got Your Back or Wild Flurry on the spender. I think right there, that attack suite with Got Your Back and Stealth would be enough for this character to be worthwhile. And then they have Siblings in Arms, which is Royal Decree, like on Medusa. And I think this just takes them to the next level. Like, they're able to be weirdly mobile when they're nearby friends, allowing them to jump over a small base character can be as much as their medium move sometimes. So it can just be free actions, and then allowing them to double tap something or hide from a thing they're in a gunfight with, hide in stealth, and then jump over a model, throw grenades, and then just go to town. It just has a ton of really interesting implications, and then there are games where you just never use it, and the model's still nuts. I'm freaking over the moon with the Commandos. I do want to talk briefly about their card. Infiltration. It's bad. It does some interesting things where you can mess with the priority system, but S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't really want to mess with the priority system. Eye in the Sky does this thing where you can just give up priority. You can just let them have priority with the intention of playing Eye in the Sky on their first activation, meaning that the first activation is bad, so they lose all the advantage of having priority. and then you get to freely kill unactivated models because you don't care that they have priority because Eye in the Sky is coming back, and you get to just play attrition and action denial super hard. So the best part of that card isn't really a thing we're after. And then more importantly, this is a medium move character on a medium base with a really relevant range 3 gun and a really relevant range 4 gun. This model will put out work on turn 1. Right? So giving up turn 1 to like deep strike or advanced deploy these characters just isn't worthwhile. Like, they need to be doing work every turn of the game for you to get the most out of them. I don't know why they would sit for a turn. Now, this effect, I think, could be good if it was on something like Crossbones or Mysterio, or if it was like, you know, like those short move, small base characters that can really impact games or really value pieces, but this is their downside. Taking a tactics card to circumvent that downside would be good, but that's not who Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos are. The next tactics card in the box that we know about is Over the Top. Over the Top is like this bad version of Face Me. Don't play this card. This card is bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's not even flavorful in my opinion. I'm just not a fan. It's just not strong. At the time of recording, we don't know the tactics card's New Age and Rough Landing. If they drop in, I will re-record this part, but these could change my opinions on some of these characters. All right, so what you guys all came for, the changes to the list. All right, so out we have She-Hulk and War Machine. I'm gonna grab them and toss them over there. And so they're gone. War Machine I still really like. I just think better stuff has come out and some things can like do his job. We'll talk about why War Machine's happening when we talk about what we put in. And then She-Hulk is just not good enough. She was here for the CS matchup and the weird armor skews or the weird like damage reduction skews that were running around. And she just doesn't consistently do that job well enough. So like into Kingpin, the problem is that Kingpin can walk up and punch her, and if he hits the wild, She-Hulk doesn't kill Kingpin anymore because of how detrimental stun is on her to like just her damage output. She needs that power to keep flowing in. And like if they swerve on you and they play Daredevil, like the rapid fire guns just murder She-Hulk. Like she just dies so quickly. She-Hulk out. So like what did we bring in to try to fix those problems? So I brought in Shuri and the Howling Commandos. So the Howling Commandos, we've talked about why they're incredible. They're new core to S.H.I.E.L.D. They just are one of the best things about the faction. So you gotta be playing them. Shuri is my new anti-CS pick, and also picks up some of War Machine's duties on the like E scenarios. So this was initially recommended to me by Nate from the podcast, but essentially the idea is that Shuri is so good at most of the criminal scenarios that they want to play because of the fact that she can push everybody that's not Juggernaut off of a point. And that they play a lot of slow or immobile characters that are durable. So just like pushing models off the point and having rerolls helps. The rerolls also help you when you do get those spikes that you can really push damage through. So like the play into Kingpin, like let's say I have to kill Kingpin this turn, we're going to take Bucky shots. Bucky shots are like 30% to deal 1 damage to do 1 damage or better to Kingpin. But when you hit that spike and you're like, oh, 4 hits, he didn't roll anything, or you roll your 3 crits or whatever, then you dump as many Shuri rerolls into trying to push more damage up over the top as you can. And then for dealing with Juggernaut, she also helps because she lets Iron Man fish for the wilds, which is one of our only 2 ways to move Juggernaut. These characters also have become less of a problem because we now have some characters that can attack with energy, and then you can also incinerate on top of that, allowing us to just really push damage through and just alter those numbers ever so slightly. So instead of being 30% to do 1 damage, we can be 55 to do 1 damage, which when we're making this many attacks really impacts the game. Field Dressing and Indomitable are cut, largely because of standard rotation and the ban and restriction update. And we've brought in Sacrifice and Sitrep. So Sacrifice I just found more useful than Indomitable, having the bodyguard to continue to play this super defensive Gordian Knot style. It's just another thing that your opponent has to try to play around when they're trying to scalpel out key characters or get a daze that they really need. They have to yet again play around just another layer of protection, and I just find it super useful. Everybody makes attacks, Sacrifice always useful. I have to be really careful. Sacrifice is really easy to misplay because you don't get to explode crits and you don't have rerolls. And it's really easy just to cheat on it and get something to live when it shouldn't. So watch that if you're playing Sacrifice or playing against people with Sacrifice. Sitrep, I think, is kind of a situational card. I actually like it more than Shieldmobile, even though it's a less strong effect. But it's so cheap, it can let you just protect things. I like it for helping you chase down kind of the slippery teams. And I like it a lot on the super wide extracts or super wide secures into scenario based teams. It hits the roster very rarely. Let's talk about rotation and how it was almost exclusively good for S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. played 3 restricted cards. It played its own version of Medpack, it played Brace, and it played Field Dressing. It still kind of gets to do this. It's just that Field Dressing being gone is super good for S.H.I.E.L.D. and the game. Sorry, Nate. When you kill things, they just stay dead, which is really great. So, the super big, super strong pieces, when S.H.I.E.L.D. takes them off the board, they stay off the board. Right? Which means they have to actually play cagey with those pieces. They can't just overextend it, know that they have the power to do a field dressing guaranteed. Which is very, very helpful for S.H.I.E.L.D., especially since we don't have a ton of pushes and we have to kind of sandpaper stuff down. So if they put up a healthy model that has 4 power to threaten a field dressing, we don't have a piece that just takes it off the board. So that's been really, really great. And also just movement shenanigans and free action cards are just way out of the meta. Almost every single one of them has left. There's just the faction exclusive ones. There's no more people playing climbing gear. There's no more people playing every other just free advanced card. What's the Sitrep card called? There's no tactical analysis anymore. All those cards that just gave you out of action movement. And a lot of the best damage cards that take our characters that should live through a couple attacks or any one character's activation now don't die consistently when they put a tactics card that buffs damage out, like Blind Obsession or something like that. All of that has just really increased the strength of S.H.I.E.L.D., even though we did lose. We literally went down in power. The game has just dropped way below us. I've moved my restricted cards to be Brace and Sacrifice. These are the 2 best damage reduction cards running around right now, especially because Disarm isn't that good for us because we never have priority. Using Bodyguard once and making it harder for you to get at us is just way better. Also, Disarm is just a really frustrating card. Sometimes you disarm a character and it still just rolls a bunch of crits and just kills stuff. The other really exciting thing about Standard is that it's really opened up the card pool. So before, we always played our 3 restricteds, Helios and Eye in the Sky. This has opened up the tightest 5 in the game by exactly 1 card. Now you almost always play, so you always play Eye in the Sky and Helios. You usually play Sacrifice. Like, I would leave Sacrifice at home into, like, Web Warriors. And Criminal Syndicate if I was really certain that they were going to, like, play KP Criminal Syndicate and just didn't have Daredevil or some swerve in their list. Brace you can leave behind in certain matchups like the Mirror. Like Shield's gonna throw 2 things at you the entire game, maybe. Like their core models don't have throws. So you can like kind of those cards are more flexible than they've ever been. And then like Field Dressing Lab, so that opens another slot. So you have really Helios and Eye in the Sky are your only locked cards. Your 2 restricted cards flex in and out based on matchup, but are in most of the time. And then you have 1 kind of flex card all the time. The most popular things to put here are Marked for Death. I like a lot here as it's really good into Web Warriors. Stealth Spam is just really brutal. You need to be able to shoot stuff. So just like lots of stealth can be problematic for S.H.I.E.L.D. and really just make us not effective at doing our job. Also, it shuts down stacking rerolls, and you can just like dunk on a character like Amazing Spider-Man and be like, "You're def 4 now, nerd. Get wrecked." Good 5 points. Sitrep sits in here, especially on wide scenarios. We're playing Extrimis, but it's also really useful to reposition on like spider portals or invasion, etc. Lastly, with the list, I have changed one of the scenarios. So we're still locked in as our extracts. Time, I think, has proven me right that the 2 best extracts are Hammers and Montessi. We're the best team at Hammers and Montessi. A lot of people still look at the list and go, I'm all right at Hammers. I'm all right at Montessi. I'll take Secures. You are not better than me at those scenarios. You should be very careful. And then Cubes has sussed out to be our best one. Just the extra power Nick Fury uses really well. The extra damage the whole team uses really well. And we can kind of spread it out. And then there's this thing where, like, because we're playing kind of low damage guns, sometimes you can just kick in dazing people in the power phase. And especially because the healing's gone in the game, this is really easy because they don't, like, most teams can't just heal a character out of being dazed by their cubes, and we can go down in points because of the leadership. For Secures, I've pulled out Scoundrels and put in Demons. In the first video, I think I said that Scoundrels was just a comfort thing because I'd been playing it a bunch with Web Warriors. Turns out that cover's really bad for S.H.I.E.L.D. The fact that I have a bunch of models that just happen to ignore cover isn't really enough to overcome the super fast scoring of the scenario and the damage reduction against most of my pieces. If I ever land against Criminal Syndicate, it usually is a very, very fast loss. And there's a ton of Criminal Syndicate running around in my meta at the moment. So for that exact reason, I've swapped in Demons because of the S.H.I.E.L.D. leadership, where we can kind of go down and catch back up in a pretty quick way. We don't have to stand on that many demon portals, and the slower scenario favors us because there's less points in the game kind of favor us, and our worst matchups are all scenario teams. Also, we've added in Shuri, and Shuri just is so good at that E shape and then can really boost up the damage of the whole team. So I've had a lot of success with that one. Let me know how it goes for you guys. All right, let's talk about S.H.I.E.L.D's best and worst matchups. So for best matchups, I'm only going to really talk about the power matchups. Like, we know that S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of dunks on Spider Foes because Spider Foes are kind of doing the same thing S.H.I.E.L.D. does, but they're a lower strength team. I don't think that's terribly interesting to talk about. But with that, let's talk about Guardians, who are a team that is very similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a bunch of kind of overstated nerds with guns that do damage, and their leadership makes them do even more damage. And they're really good at splashing outside characters to really like take their damage to the next level. So Guardians makes better attacks than Shield, but Shield makes way more attacks, which typically evens that out. And then the leadership comes in, allowing me to take an attrition advantage while slightly down on points, to just create like kind of like big upside. And I've played this matchup a ton. Shield seems super favored. Guardians struggle to get like just like the surface area of damage onto Shield in a meaningful enough way to like win attrition. And if they don't win attrition, they can't really. They're not that much better at scenario than Shield is. Another matchup we're really good into is Black Order. Black Order is still very strong in the meta, but Shield is uniquely positioned to be very strong into them. I know last time it was mostly hypothetical. I've got games into it now. The match is just really good. Like being able to deny Corvus Glaive's edge. Essentially, you just sit on Eye in the Sky, and when he Glaive's edges someone, then you pull the trigger on it. Or same thing with Death's Decree. You try to race to as fast of a Helios as you can, and you just drop it on undazed Thanos to get him dazed, because Thanos without Portal doesn't do enough work to beat Shield. They're exclusively playing Mind. The Thanos that's running around is exclusively Mind Space now, meaning that it is the best Thanos against us, because once you laser him, he still does have some board control. But if he's spending one action walking, and then doing a bunch of stuff to you with an action and moving around and stuff, it's just not worth the 8-point investment. They typically don't get it out of him. Also, Luke Cage is a huge problem for them, because Heroes for Hire just makes it so hard for them to apply Corvus in the right spot. And then now I'm adding Sacrifice to that concern as well. Plus, Black Order kind of got dicked in Standard because their 2 gems that are core to their design are restricted cards now. So they don't have Indomitable. They don't have any of the mobility cards. Right? They are just having a tough time, I think. All right, and lastly, let's talk about like kind of the elephant in the room. Everybody on the internet is going nuts about Malekith. Shield dunks Malekith. Like the one big model meta is exactly what Shield wants to play against, because it has Helios and Eye in the Sky. Eye in the Sky lets us deny one of your super valuable attacks, an attack from a 7-threat model that doesn't get to happen because a 4-threat model played a tactics card that comes back every turn. Makes it just so hard for you to get your value out of him. And then once Malekith flips, he has to be cognizant of Helios at all times. So your plan into him is to keep Fury and Iron Man as safe as possible while still chipping damage onto his team. I've got 3 games with the matchup. I have successfully Heliosed Malekith every single game, including one game where the guy had Heroes for Hire and Lethal Protector and Sacrifice. So I just had to sit there and bait all of those things out and get Malekith flipped, and then I lasered him off the table, and then it was game over from there. All right, let's wrap this thing up with our worst matchups. Criminal Syndicate remains a problem for us. And I think it's actually kind of gotten worse because, first of all, Criminal Syndicate is super popular right now. And second, Versatile Strategy is actually legitimate. Is legitimately a good card in that faction. Their ability to open as Kingpin, get a big points lead, and then after I chip damage or start flipping their characters and it's not viable anymore, switching to Daredevil, who already is stealth, already counts blanks, is kind of a thing we don't want to see in general, now gets to really like pour damage into us as we have to stand on these objectives in order to not lose the game. Lets him just like close the game out. It's really hard for us to play against. There's too many tanky targets for Helios. The Commandos have helped out a lot. Like they let you focus people down easier, and Shuri helps with that as well. The matchup is still like just very, very difficult. And I think if played well, they can absolutely take games off S.H.I.E.L.D. I think they're very favored. Our next bad matchup, we're going to talk about X-Men and Brotherhood because they're bad for kind of the same reasons, and that's cover. Cover very good against S.H.I.E.L.D. The roster is teched for it a ton. I'm playing a bunch of cover ignoring models to try to fight this. But Storm giving cover all the time, and Magneto always going first and being able to constantly replay magnetic refraction does give the faction problems. Into X-Men, they have a lot of problem pieces for you. Rogue and X-23 are both very good into S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of people misplay charge into S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, a lot of people just charge S.H.I.E.L.D. models and then get eye in the sky and they're just like sad. The two ways to play charge into S.H.I.E.L.D. to make it effective into S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'm going to be sad that I'm ruining this for people, for all my fellow S.H.I.E.L.D. players. Charge, and have two models in melee that you're okay hitting. Just know that when you open up and you're looking for your engage, that you're not going to get an ideal one. Force them to play eye in the sky, attack the model, and then attack the model that they give you as a consolation prize. Don't lose your actions. Second, start in melee with the model you want to kill with a charge model. Eye in the sky doesn't work. I punch you, like you punch me, I eye in the sky out, you charge me, and then I don't have eye in the sky. Alright, I spent eye in the sky for nothing, and you still kill the model that you wanted to. I change your positioning slightly. It's just not worth the card. That's the best way to use charge, and then it's especially strong with like someone like Killmonger who gets the bonus dice. Killmonger's really good in the S.H.I.E.L.D. in general. He only has to kill like a cost 4 model to trigger Usurp, so Usurp's really easy. Then if I lead an attack from Killmonger, he gets focused on the kill when he then charges them, right? Because the attack did happen, he hit his trigger. So starting in melee with like Nick Fury probably dies. You either make a 5 and then a 7 at him, or I eye in the sky out on the first attack, and then you charge him, and then you make a 7 and a 7. Brutal. Brutal, brutal, brutal. Character's very good into him. And then X-23, like the assassin triggers, like we're all, like every single one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s characters is within range to be just like spiked by X-23. X-23 can use the spender into a S.H.I.E.L.D. model, forcing the S.H.I.E.L.D. model to commit to eye in the sky right away on the first attack, because otherwise she can walk to base and then prevent them from doing the attack again. Also, if you have like 2 models engaged, you can threaten to spender 1. If I leave with that one, you spender the other, and then walk up to the initial one, and I've spent eye in the sky for no action reduction. Healing factor also is very good into S.H.I.E.L.D. because I'm chip damage, so I just like really don't want to fight X-23. Classic S.H.I.E.L.D. tactic when fighting X-23 is just to concede the space to her. Like she goes and takes the flank, you fold away, and you fight the rest of the team. If you're the X-23 player, you just have to bury X-23 at me. You can't leave X-23 as a point sitter. She's not going to get her points, and that model's broken. You have to be putting it into melee. Alright. Finally, we'll talk about our least worst matchup. So, of our bad matchups, the best one, which is Asgard. Asgard is really dice dependent and a really dicey matchup. The leadership gives them constant healing 1, and they're like all death 4. And what this can, you can fall into this method, or you can fall into this play pattern where like you do a couple damage to all of the Asgard models, they heal a couple damage. You do a couple damage, they heal a couple damage, and they don't manage, or like, and you don't manage to make any ground on Asgard. And it's really tough to just like get out of that hole, and there's too many of them to just Helios everybody. So this compounded with the fact that if you end up on Extrimis, well, like they can heal 2 a turn, and they can be really tough to kill. And then if you spike, they have Odin's Blessing to stop that spike, and it can be played on like any of their models. So that can be like really, really tough, and you have to like get Odin's Blessing out of the way before you play your Helios. They're also really good at meteors. Meteors is not a scenario that we love because we want that granularity so that we can stay within 1 point of view and like just be 1 point behind. You kill one of our models, we have the other side of our leadership on, and we're parity with you. The all or nothing scenarios are really good against S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. plays sword okay, but like just the way that the scenario functions is not S.H.I.E.L.D. favored, and Asgard likes that stuff. So while Asgard I don't think is like a powerful faction, they are strangely good at beating S.H.I.E.L.D. That leads me into our final section where we're going to talk about. Did I already say final section? Our final section. That leads us into talking about our worst scenarios. Our worst type of scenarios, like we just said, are the all or nothing scenarios. But this extends to extracts as well. So the single extracts that are all or nothing, because there's only one, so you scoring 2 points off the extract, aren't great for us because, again, that granularity is what we want. We want to just fall 1 point behind and then catch up, 1 point behind and then catch up. The single extracts are also uniquely rough for S.H.I.E.L.D. The grunts can't interact with 2 of the 3 single extracts. They can't search for the Kree power core. They can't look for the Senator. And then, and they're pretty good once they get it, but like it's not easy for them to get. And then we have no real extract stealing. Torch does it now. But again, I'm not sure we're going to be playing Torch, and there aren't really many models that do the thing that we're looking for there and still contribute to the S.H.I.E.L.D. game plan in a meaningful way without us like taking a big hit to commit to this much to scenario. So the single extracts, my recommendation is play the movement card so you can chase down Black Cat, play Marked for Death so you can make her short move and shoot around her stealth. And you kind of just have to kill their models. You have to do attrition hard when they get that. If you can manage to get it off of them and put it on a grunt, you can protect it pretty well. You have a lot of tricks to protect the single extracts, but getting them can be really tough. We talked about S.H.I.E.L.D. not being very good at meteors, but it's kind of just flip scenarios in general. And it's not that S.H.I.E.L.D. is bad at flip scenarios. There are a lot of teams, or the teams that are really good at flip scenarios are much better than S.H.I.E.L.D. at flip scenarios. Like X-Men and Asgard are much better at flip scenarios than S.H.I.E.L.D. is. The extra power generation, the extra stats, the free first class, the free interactions that X-Men get on turn 1, let them just put a ton of scenario pressure early, especially in those all or nothing scenarios. So I think that makes those kind of tough. And then the final thing that S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of bad at is intrusions. This is kind of hard to explain, but like we don't love taking free damage, but we like them taking free damage. But the thing that really kills it for us is S.H.I.E.L.D. has a lot of mobility tricks. They're like the last true mobility trick faction between the leadership, our tactics cards, and just a lot of our characters have weird action compression, whether it be Brothers in Arms, Hydra Tactics, Hook Arrow, Hit and Run, right? Like any of those things. The opponents don't have those effects, and this scenario gives them that. And then the C shape we're not in love with because we're a gun line. And this is a meet in the middle. Our guns can't both stand on objectives and shoot you from safety. They have to pick. My recommendation for these scenarios is play your damage reducing characters. This is the one spot where War Machine was better than Shuri. But I've cut him from the roster. So you play like, this is exactly the kind of thing that Luke Cage and Venom are in the roster for. They're to be up there and be big bruisey idiots trying to protect our other softer friends. Okay guys, that's my S.H.I.E.L.D. list. Let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. You can subscribe if you want to see the next video I upload. You can become a patron right up here. I'm Vincent Curkov.
And I'm Zaray.
How long have you been there?
Long enough, Vince. Long enough.